All right, hold on. I just realized I'm starting up the recording anyway. Moorhead, Minnesota. Yes, Lori. No, cold and dry for her. And Vancouver instead got like a massive dumping yesterday, right, Veronica? Yep. So we've got weird things of the snow. It's a really interesting perspective. All right. Linda came out. She's coming back in. All right. So welcome, 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 everyone. I am so excited to have you here. Let me.
Wait,
Ooh,
wait.
I got it. Okay. I am going to share my screen now. Where is it? I think this is correct. Yes. There we are. So hopefully you can all see my screen. Can you see my slides? Yay. Okay. But it gave me this and I don't want this. I want this to be bigger. All right. We're trying to make it big because I like being able to see all of you, even though I have a slide deck up. So let's open that up so that I can see you all. And I'm going to open up a few things. This is like preparing a screen for when you do an event is like 3/4 of the work, believe it or not. It's like, I got to prepare. Okay. So hello, 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 everyone. I have hit the record button, so I know that that's working. Thank you just for your presence, Linda, because when Linda's my remember to record person. So just seeing her reminds me of that. We have roles here as Sprouts. We have roles. So I'm super happy to have you here. For those of you that are new, I just really, thank you. I'm super excited. Today, we're going to be talking about how to create a relationship with your limiting beliefs. Not exactly the topic most people talk about in that way, but before I start, if you are a Sprout, you are probably used to discussions. We tend to have a lot of discussions in the naturally conscious community and master classes where we tend to get into the material really deeply through conversation. Since this is a webinar, please try to use the chat function. There is going to be times when I'm going to weave you in. I am going to do my best to also keep an eye out. Actually, let me open that now to keep an eye out on the chat so that I can catch questions as they come. But just because there's going to be so much material that I'm going to cover, and I just want to make sure that we actually have the time to go through it. I have, like I said before, left myself open afterwards, so I am willing to answer questions as we go. And especially for the recording, for those of you that are watching the recording, thank you. And please post in the comments that you're watching because we just want to know that you're here. I have no doubt whatsoever that this is the first time that you find yourself listening to a presentation, a course, a something or other podcast about limiting beliefs. But today, I kind of want to share with you a new way of looking at and seeing these blocks, right? I want you to really walk away from this looking at your limiting beliefs more as friends rather than foes, so that you can feel grateful for their service and you're ready to allow the talents that they've been kind of protecting to break through that protective shell. So if at some point, probably right now, you've been held back by the power of a limiting belief, that stranglehold or that nettlesome little voice that just keeps coming, you are in absolutely the right place, because that's exactly what we're going to focus on today. So I also have a feeling that you've probably tried a bunch of different things, many different techniques to overcome your negative beliefs, and you're still finding yourself stuck. So in my experience, limiting beliefs really fall under 4 main buckets. Now, when I say buckets, as we know, limiting beliefs are to a certain extent insidious, and they layer one upon each other. And every time we start to peel back one of these layers, we start to understand what one of these layers is, something else pops up. This is totally normal. And that's why I mentioned these 4 buckets, because I want you to just understand that these are kind of the 4 main catch-alls But within them, there's lots of nuances. There's lots of little elements. And so when we start working with the limiting beliefs, it's kind of important for us to understand that it's not an all or nothing. This isn't something that's just going to work in 10 seconds. This is about creating an entirely new type of relationship with this. So here are the four main buckets. The first one is that feeling of unworthiness. Now, this is probably, I have been running a limiting beliefs quiz for a few years now. I constantly am updating it based on the feedback that I get and based on my relationship with the plants and what they teach me. And feeling unworthy usually ends up being the end all be all, the one you eventually reach. My recommendation for you is not to try to start there, because even if you feel unworthy, it's probably connected to lots of little pieces. But ultimately, this is where self-doubt really clouds every decision that you make. You have tons of really great ideas. You are really motivated in a lot of ways. But when it comes to take action, the constant what ifs, the constant well, can I? It will really paralyze you in place. So even when you do finally figure out and muster up the strength, you finally get that, whatever it is that you need in order to really work through that feeling of unworthiness. Well, let's just say that you end up trying to go it alone because you don't feel worthy of getting any kind of help. You don't tell other people your fear because you don't feel worthy of being able to do this. So sometimes you even successfully convince yourself that it's not even worth it for you to continue on. And that's probably the most challenging part about this, that you don't really deserve or have enough value to be able to get help to work on this. And this is the reason why I say that even if you're suffering under this category, most likely it's better for you to kind of like look at some of the pieces in between before you actually tackle that one. It's one of those that will slowly unpeel. Like you'll crack through the different pieces and evolve different pieces. And eventually one day you'll realize it's not there. And that's what kind of makes that a moving target to a certain extent. The second most popular, most sought after, no, nobody looks for this, but it's the one that most people experience, is imposter syndrome. This is where you do the work. You've studied hard. You probably even have credentials, certificates, degrees, expertise, but there's always a but maybe you don't feel like you have enough experience, or whatever it is, you don't feel like you're really qualified to do the thing that you really want to do. So you keep looking for more. This is I take a course and I get that certification, but I'm not allowed to teach that because I actually need to study more, because I need to have more experience, because deep down, you have the talent, but you hide your visibility in the fear of being judged by others. Sorry. You have that fear of that. And so what you're hoping, and this is something that women go through a lot more than men, you're hoping somebody recognizes you for it. Because if somebody else sees it in you, then it's true. So you yourself can't recognize it. You can't recognize yourself for the expertise that you have, no matter how many years and degrees and certificates. But if somebody else recognizes it, so you're constantly leaving yourself sort of there without asserting who you are. And instead, you're looking for somebody to notice you for it. So just keep an eye on that. That one's another one that has lots of different pieces connected to it, especially, I have to say, if you're a woman, because we were taught to you have to wait until you're called upon, as opposed to pushing yourself forward. And we're seen as aggressive, or many other terms that I'm not even going to get into right now. The third one is it's not going to work. This is one of those that is so sneaky. I have to admit, this is one that I have suffered for many years. I used to suffer it. You actually do the work that you want to do. You actually do the things that you feel are the right steps, but the whole time in your mind, you're thinking, it's never going to work. I mean, I'm going to do that. I'm going to, I don't know, post that information. I'm going to go to that event. I'm going to, try to get that job. But in the back of your mind, you keep telling yourself, it's not going to work. they're not going to pick me. I see this one over and over and over and over and over again, because it is, again, one of those that sort of layers under other things. You create a strategy, you execute it perfectly, and then, just as you predicted, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The results speak for themselves. Nothing, nada. It doesn't work. So little tiny successes here and now you get, but you get no big boom. And that's what you're really looking for. You're looking for that place where all of a sudden everything just falls into place. Real success, real, sustainable, affluent success is for others. That's what you believe it deep and down. It's not for you. The fourth, and probably the one that most people don't even realize that they're suffering from it when they're in it, because it's so connected to the conditioning that you have had throughout your life, is no pain, no gain. This one is like the idea that growth takes hard work. I mean, and we see this, we see the memes, we see the quotes, we see so many places where they tell us over and over again that if you want to have results, you gotta work hard, you gotta sweat, it's gotta be painful. In the immortal words of Norman Schwarzkopf, success is sweet, but the secret is sweat. And so when things come naturally, when things come easily, you start to look for the problems. You try to find out exactly what is going to go wrong. You prepare yourself for the worst because that came too easily. And eventually, when you go digging for something, you find it. And so you create the problems that eventually become the downfall. And then that just justifies the idea that, oh, it was all coming way too easy. And so that's why it wasn't going to work. So you might not even realize oftentimes that you're creating it. This is one of those, probably the one that most people that are suffering from it don't realize that they're actually suffering from it. Now, there are others. There are many others, but these are probably the four big macro categories, and they can be applied to anything: jobs, family, money, relationships. At one point, you've probably lived through all of these and experienced them in some ways. I mean, I know I have. So don't be surprised that it's more than one. So show of hands, right? You can either use the reactions or you can even raise your hands if you've got your video on. Who's experienced one or any of these, or has experienced them right now? If I was like one of those Hindu divinities, I'd have like multiple hands up, right? It just is. It's just one of those things that happens. Okay, so our goals for today, let's get into this. Let's get into the meat. The goals for today is that I want you to walk away from this webinar understanding that your limiting beliefs actually serve a purpose. Yep, believe it or not, they have a reason for their existence. That's a positive reason. I know it's hard to believe that our blocks and our negative traits and our characteristics that people have always told are like the things that are your downfall have a positivity, but seriously, they do. The second most thing that I want you to do is I want you to identify, I want you at the end of this to be able to identify the most pressing limiting belief, the thing that is really right now, the one that is your impetus, the thing that's holding you back, that's completely blocking you. I tend to use the term limiting belief and block. The reason I sometimes switch to block is because limiting beliefs have the definition oftentimes for people of thinking about it as something you were taught or you learned, where a block can be one of your own characteristics. Your own characteristics, like, for example, I was told I can't even tell you how long, that I was a negative person. And therefore, that became my block, this belief that I was a negative person. But it's actually a characteristic that it's actually based on a series of characteristics that I had to go one by one and understand their actual function. So the third thing I want to do is give you an easy tool set to see what type of nourishment is necessary so that the talent that is hiding beneath that limiting belief, it's underneath the protection of your limiting belief, can actually begin to emerge. So limiting beliefs is a really delicate subject. I just want to emphasize that this is This is sensitive work. This is vulnerable work. Sometimes the beliefs that we're talking about have become such a core part of who you are that you, like I said before, think of them as a negative character trait. They think of it as something you're born with. It's part of your personalities. I was actually having a discussion with one of my clients the other day, and we were talking about personalities. And she literally listed out 6 of her, what she feels like are her personality traits or her personalities. 3 of them in her mind were positive and 3 of them were negative. No, there is no such thing as a positive or a negative personality. They all have a function, and it's more of understanding how that function works. So that's something I really want you to work with. I mean, sometimes we form these super thick walls that prevent us from moving forward. And that's really what this block or this limiting belief is. They can be seen as obstacles. Resistance is another term that we use, self-sabotage. So blocks really encompass the whole thing: limiting beliefs, obstacles, resistance, self-sabotage. I'm sure you can probably come up with a bunch of other forms that it is. And how many times have you probably been told, it's just a mindset problem? You just need to get over it, right? I love that one. I love that one's my favorite. Like, just release it. Go out into the woods and release it. Dude, if that really worked, and I love my plants and I trust them to help me, but no, no. You feel even worse when somebody says that to you. It's just your mindset. Reframe it. Sorry, I'm being a little bit facetious, but it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. In this whole discussion, I have to say, it has been 20 plus, maybe 25 years, you'll hear why in a second, that I have been working on this. And the amount of things that I have been told or I have heard or read about that actually made me feel worse is greater than the things that actually helped. So I hope that we don't walk away, none of you thinking that anything I said makes you feel worse. If you do, please, you have my permission to message me right away and to be like, you said this and now I feel worse. Because maybe you had an experience like I had so long ago where I felt like I had transformed a belief, because that was, the word that we were supposed to use: transform a belief, release it, only to have something happen where the belief came right back to the surface and totally blocked where I was. So that's the other reason why it's not just simply about reframing or rethinking these types of things. They're going to keep coming back unless you give them what they need. I find that when it happens, that belief almost becomes doubly strong, because it's like they already know what you're going to try to do in order to get rid of them. And so it's really hard for you to gather up all of your energy and to really trust that you're going to be able to go through this. This is one that especially happens with it's not going to work, which, different from unworthiness, where it's almost like you can get to a collective understanding that, wait a minute, I am worthy, and this is just bullshit that's happening to me. Sorry for the curse words. But when it comes to something like it's not going to work, it's such a subtle part of the way that you think that you don't even realize it. And so when you do get through it and then you fall back, it's like, oh, forget it. It's not going to work. So why should I even try? So limiting beliefs are really caused by a number of factors, but they pretty much all stem from the same place. So this is something where ultimately your mind's desire to protect you from what your mind considers to be a pain that is going to happen in the future based on an experience from the past. And mind you, anybody who knows me knows that when I talk about the past, I'm not necessarily always just talking about this life. It could be multiple lives that it comes from. So let me say that again, because this is a part where really the current methodology, the idea of transforming a limiting belief, gets it wrong. A limiting belief isn't formed because necessarily something bad happened. So you can't just go to find the trauma that created the limiting belief. A limiting belief is formed when your mind is trying to protect you from what it considers to be a future pain based on something that may have happened to you in the past. So when this thing happened in the past, your mind said, oh, this thing is happening. These are the conditions in which these types of things happen. So anytime this tries to happen again, I'm going to block it because I don't ever want you to feel like like anything is like to experience that thing again. So, because these beliefs generally hold us back from doing or accomplishing something, we think of them as negative. But the truth of the matter is that this thing is actually protecting you. Oops, sorry. This thing is actually protecting you from being called wrong, from something that could possibly go wrong, for something that maybe happened where at the time that it happened was bad, but today would be positive for you. Maybe you just weren't ready back then, but today you would be totally ready. So this thing is really trying to put you in the place that you were always in the past in order to protect you from what may happen in the future. Does that make sense? Oh, good. It's always nice when it makes sense. So the topic of limiting beliefs is really something that touches so many different aspects of our lives. That's the reason, again, I use the term blocks sometimes because it's characteristics and traits and all these other aspects. And we only have an hour here. And in this time, I really want to cover as much as possible without being overwhelming. Because, some of you know that I can be a bit overwhelming. I get very carried away and I want to give 1,001 examples and I want to help you through every single little step of it. So that's what happens. So I'm going to try to hold myself back. That's the reason why I have these beautiful slides that Veronica helped me create. And to be totally transparent, at the end of this webinar, I'm going to be talking to you about how we can work together to evolve these limiting beliefs in a group program and also in dedicated one-on-one work. But before we go there, I want to talk about what we can do today, what we can do here right now. I want you to walk away if you have with the feeling that you've opened a whole new productive conversation with your limiting beliefs. Are we ready? Are we ready to dive in? Awesome. So, look, this is back when I had my pink hair. I was looking at a video with me with the pink hair today, and I was like, I kind of miss it. I'm not going back to pink though. Pink is just way too hard to upkeep. Anyway, for me, all of this work with limiting beliefs really started in a super personal place, as you can imagine. You might have heard me say time and time again that if I ever write an autobiography, which I think there are some people in this group right now who are trying to kick me to do something like that. But I have a limiting belief on that. If I ever write an autobiography, the first line of it is going to read, I am the most positive, negative person you have ever met. Because the truth of the matter is my mind thinks in negatives. When I say the word negative, at this stage in my life, I am not talking about something bad. I am talking about negative as in the idea of the shadow versus the light. I'm talking about the idea of the action versus the containment. So to me, negative now has a whole different definition. But for most of my life, I struggled with negativity. It would come out in the form of criticism, aggression, a whole heck of a lot of judgment. Even when I thought I was using words that were gentle, the truth of the matter is I was slapping people silly and then getting slapped back in return. And try as I may, I really couldn't get rid of it. This really did touch all aspects of my life, from my work to my relationships. I lost jobs. I was denied promotions. I had friendships end. And well, you get the picture. I have notebooks and notebooks filled with different attempts to transform those limiting beliefs that I was a negative person and that my judgment had no purpose whatsoever but to wreak havoc in everything that I touched and in the lives of everyone around me. That was really what I believed. I believed that I had to completely hold myself back from everything that was a criticism, that everything that was a negativity. That I could never be aggressive, that I could never get angry. I thought that was the way that I was going to eliminate this part of myself. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I would cry and cry, asking the universe why I couldn't leave behind the negativity and be a nice person. I wanted to be nice. Look at Michelle's face. She's like, no, it doesn't work. I just don't know how to be that kind of nice person. Like the one you see in with the like in movies. No, I can't be that. I actually remember being told at work that I couldn't have the position that I really wanted. It was perfect. I was even told this is the perfect position for you, but you have a negative attitude and the rest of the team doesn't want to work with you. Literally to my face, I was told that. I ended up having to eventually leave that company because there was just no way to transform their beliefs in me and to evolve. As I was evolving, they weren't evolving with me. They had chosen to pigeonhole me in that location, in that place, which, to be honest, I filled completely for several years on my path. Because really that judgment would just come out of my mouth. So I want to tell you how far I actually went to try to fix this. This is one of those stories that only I think women who are probably a little bit older would truly understand. I used to manage a small team of technical testers in a high-tech company. So just the fact that I was in that role was already a huge thing. There wasn't that many of us that were women that were technical enough to be in those types of teams. I told them in a meeting that I was actually working on my negative way of speaking. So therefore, if I spoke to one of them in a way that felt overly negative, that either when alone or in a group, something that felt maybe condescending, or if I was presumptuous was a word I used to get all the time, not knowledgeable, presumptuous, judgmental. If I had said any of those types of things to them, they had my permission to take me aside and to tell me, right? I thought I was being radical honesty. But for a woman in high tech, that is career suicide. Career suicide. Because the men could be jerks and they would be called assertive and go-getters, but assertive women were considered bitches and hard to work with. So publicly admitting to my team that I was a difficult person was enough to get me demoted, to be honest. I got demoted in that and I could no longer work. But the truth of the matter is that that was part of the process I needed to go through because I needed to understand what this thing was. And I needed to probably go through that to know that that's not the way, that it's fine to be radically honest in the right context. And that the truth of the matter is nobody is wholly negative. So I just kind of wanted to set that because I know what this feels like on my skin. As you can imagine, it was the plants that really helped me finally click over to another way of thinking. You could say that the plants brought things together for me that had been arriving from all of my different spiritual studies and from other ways that I was looking at it. I was actually in the Sacred Woods Temple at Damanhur. I was walking around and I was guided. There's a lot of episodes where I'm in the Sacred Woods and things happen. I used to live in the Sacred Woods Temple in a treehouse village. So I spent a lot of time walking around these woods. And I was guided to sit and observe some plants. And I can't even tell you which plants they were or why I was told, but in that moment, the plants wanted me to stop and look at the forest floor and just be there with different eyes. Look, the whole story is a little bit too long for me to tell because, time. So I'm going to fast forward to the action parts because there are action parts. The plants made me see that everything in the ecosystem has a function. Everything takes in and everything puts out. Even the stuff that is discarded by other plants, the things that we consider to be waste or their negative output, such as leaves, dead trunks, any kind of excrement, were actually useful to other species if they were in the right location. So decomposers needed to be there, needed to be able to take in the waste of all of these other species in order to create the soil for the roots and other organisms to grow. So even though they are fulfilling a negative function, it is that negative function that creates the positive soil that we have today. It was then and there that I was told my negativity and judgment, everything that I had been experienced, was a function and it had a purpose. And a whole world opened up for me because I could now see that all of these negative beliefs I had of myself, all of this negativity that I was pouring out of myself actually had a use, and that the problem was not the behavior, but it was that I hadn't learned when and how to use the behavior. So over the next few weeks, I was really taken back to different times in my life, and even some past lives, to be honest, to where those characteristics that I kept calling negative had actually protected me from something bigger. They had moved me in. That aggression, for example, had been able to protect me from getting hurt. That criticism had helped me see key points that could have hurt me. I was shown talents and skills that were hidden underneath this protective shell of all of these limiting beliefs. And I was stuck on the excessive negative belief, that limiting belief around it. And I wasn't able to see all of the delicate nuances of how that talent actually could be used. Had they been exposed at that time in my life, I would have crushed them with the outside world. The talents that were beneath, if I would have tried to use them, I did not have the skills to do that. And so therefore, they would have been harmed. And that limiting belief, that arguing with men in that way, in those jobs, that high-tech environment, I was actually keeping them safe so that when I was in an environment where I knew I could use them, I could have them come out and express themselves. Every once in a while, I would try to use some of those talents or skills, but honestly, I was just too inexperienced and too immature. And so they were never coming out. Not only was the environment outside me not ready, but I hadn't even created the conditions inside of myself for them to thrive. Outside of me, there was only poor soil. And so that was a soil that was made out of jealousy and fear. And so had I taken some of those talents and tried to bring them out, they would have come out through jealousy and fear. And therefore, they would have been smushed down really in a way that didn't allow me to really experience that. So my skills were basically bundled up and encased in these protective layers. Each one of these protective layers, a different block or limiting belief. And every time I called upon the protection that I was looking for, a new layer or a new shell was created around that sensitivity, that new talent, kind of like a seed shell that is protecting the delicate life force that's not ready for the outside world. Ooh, started moving. Does this all making sense? Oh, good. Yay for making sense. So these are hard concepts. Anybody who knows me knows that I spend like so long trying to translate what the plants are teaching me and what my body can first respond to and understand into words that actually make sense. It takes me so long. I spend so many hours recording myself and writing and experiencing to try to just figure out the easiest way to get this out to you. And basically in this particular case, after those years and years and years of protection, all these limiting beliefs, that shell was so hard that it seemed almost impenetrable. Like it really just felt like I couldn't access the talent within. I kept dimming my light more and more. I have actually, I was just working today on one of my podcast episodes where I'm going to talk about a completely different side of myself where I dimmed my light for so many years based on exactly this same thing. Another talent that I had that I hid underneath this. It's so much that you actually forget you have these talents. I had forgotten parts of myself, things that I used to do. If you ask my mother what I did as a child to play, in my mind, I used to go outside and play with my friends, and I rode bikes for a few years, and I like rode bikes as in racing, and I also, used to play some sports, and my mother's like, no, you used to do theater in the house all the time. You would put on these plays and you would do these fashion shows and all these completely like forgot that I had danced for so many years, but that I had taken that dance into a theaterish realm. And it wasn't just like my dance classes, but I had done all of that. It was just all of these pieces. And really you forget that it's there. All you see is that shell, kind of like when you look at a seed, it's really sometimes hard for you to remember that there's a plant inside waiting to sprout. You just see the seed. You forget the shape of the plant. You forget how the plant really looks and how that plant grows. You forget what the flower might look like because you're just caught up in the seed. And this is when that protection becomes a limit. It's cutting you off from your talents. You're no longer able to consciously use that skill. And that's when that protective shell is the only thing between you and that talent, but it feels completely impenetrable. So fast forward to after so many years of working through this and growth and maturity and evolution, and the conditions of my life have changed. My soil is now richer with people and experiences, but unfortunately, that shell still remains because the shell, that seed that got created around my talents, is stuck in the past. It doesn't know that I changed. It thinks that it's still back in those conditions when I was in high tech. And so the only thing I can think about doing at this point is throwing it away and starting over again, right? Because I think, oh, this seed is probably not even viable anymore. It's probably just become a stone. And so, because I don't remember what's inside, I don't remember the talent that is actually being protected in there. So you think, forget it. I just need to release it and let it go and move forward. And it was, once again, it was for me, it was the plants that helped me really recognize that this was a seed and that seed incubates life. And in this particular case, the life was my talents, the ability to master my talents, to be nuanced, to use them, to learn from them. So rather than crack the shell from the outside, I needed to find a way to make contact with that talent within and ask the talent to help me understand what were the conditions that I needed to tell the shell were necessary in order for them to emerge. So this is a relationship in order to get the shell to understand that your life is different. I had to thank the shell for really helping me see that it had protected my talents. I had to focus on a direct dialogue with the talent within, asking what was needed in order for the soil to be ready to sprout. I focused on fertilizing that inner soil, on working and giving that talent warmth and nourishment, and really think of it as a process of growing where it slowly cracks the shell from the outside, because the shell recognizes that the conditions now are ready for something to emerge. And eventually that limiting belief cracks open, evolving from seed to sprout, and little by little into a full plant of your talents that you can consciously use today. More than use it, it's really about creating a reciprocal relationship, a partnership with that talent where you nourish the soil and the talent then is free to move in its full range of motion. And that's really what I want to help you do. So we are taught that we need to transform our limiting beliefs into positive beliefs. And honestly, I think that's hogwash. I think it's crap. Because beliefs are formed on real events that have happened to you or that your mind thinks are going to happen to you. So once that protective shield is actually, that seed is completely formed, it can only grow if the conditions of your inner soil are no longer a danger. And that is its function. Its function is positive, even though it is a limited belief. The limiting belief is not inherently wrong. It's not bad. If the context in which the seed was created is the same, if you have not changed the conditions of your life, then that limiting belief is going to continue to protect you. It's going to continue to hold that talent safe. So I had to change my social and my professional circles completely in order for the talents within to start to emerge. I needed to tell that limiting belief that what the conditions of my life were different, that there was no need to protect me because that talent can now emerge. If I would have tried to emerge as the leader that I am today, back when I was in that tech company, I would have been slaughtered. I would have been told that women aren't supposed to be that way. I would have been told all these different aspects, and I would have been made to see that it was wrong. Today, I can express that leadership in a completely different way, in a way that is much more conducive to the kind of leadership that I want, the collaborative, decentralized leadership that I want. I can be more of a mentor and a coach rather than being an authoritarian person, because that was what those conditions that I was in at that time were trying to teach me. Does that all make sense? Okay, good. Yay, sense. So the first question you need to ask yourself as you start this process is you need to address the limiting belief directly, and you need to ask that shell, that seed, are the conditions in which this belief, in which you live in, the same as when you were formed? In other words, are the conditions today exactly the same as they were back then? And if the answer is then yes, then if the answer is yes, then you just want to leave the belief exactly where the belief is, and you want to focus on the context of your life. If that seed was formed in a time when the environment around you was in a certain way, where the talent that's within it would get hurt if it came out, and that is still what's happening to you today, do not touch your limiting belief. You have a different problem. That is not the problem that you have, and not the problem for you to solve. If instead the answer is no, and your conditions are different, and it is now safe for that talent to emerge, now the work shifts to reconnecting with the talent and letting the talent know that the environment is now suited for what the skill has to offer you, for what that talent has to offer you. And then, since the seed shell was created with around that talent, when the conditions have changed and the seed is planted in these new conditions consciously, it is, and the talent knows this. It's almost like the whole Dachka. I put the seed in my mouth in order for the seed to connect and get my saliva, and then I plant the seed, and it's almost like I connect in. You have to imagine yourself in that process. I then have to connect in to what's inside of that seed, and I need to let the seed know that the conditions have changed and that the talent knows this, and the talent wants to emerge. This is why you need to stop focusing on the limiting belief in and of itself. It's the talent within the limiting belief, the skills that you have within that limiting belief. That's who you have to do your talking to. In other words, you have to consciously open a dialogue with the talent or the skill within the seed, instead of focusing all of your conversation on the limiting shell itself. That's where we get it wrong. We try to focus on the limiting belief itself, and we forget that we have to nourish the talent within. Once the talent knows that it's safe to come out, it's going to crack that limiting belief all by itself. Another flat out lie that we're told is that you need to let go or detach from your limiting belief. Why would you ever want to detach from something that has been protecting you from harm for years? That would be like kicking out your bodyguard just because you're not currently in a public place. But that's what happens. People do this, and then you end up walking around without that bodyguard. Those guards protect you, and you want that guard to protect you every single time your conditions go back to that place. They watch for dangers and attacks. They look for things that might hurt you. And instead of letting them go, you want to help them understand when they should be on alert and when they should stand down. So rather than hate or want to distance yourself from that function, you need to embrace it. Bring them close to you. This protection, this limiting belief, it just deserves your respect. It deserves your gratitude, because it's been protecting you for so long. And you want that to be what continues to happen if the conditions should ever go back to that time. I actually recently discovered a limiting belief that I thought I had as a limiting belief that turned out was a protection that was happening from something that I'm not going to get into really here, because it's one of those very sensitive topics you can only imagine that unfortunately many young girls go through. And this limiting belief had protected me by really dealing with aspects of my sexuality in a certain way. And I realized in that moment that there was a lot of things that I still needed protection from, because the sexuality that was underneath that limiting belief was still very fragile, and I needed to work first with that part of myself before I could ever tell the limiting belief that it was okay to crack open. But I wouldn't have gotten there if I had just thought about the limiting belief. If I would have just focused on the idea that, some aspect of me was wrong, I had to get deeper into that, into the talent within, the aspects of myself that I had hidden in there. I want you to really form a relationship with the fear center of your mind, explaining that the danger experienced in the past no longer exists if it doesn't. I want you to feel explicit, be really explicit, providing details on how your inner soil and the conditions have actually changed. The present is not the past. And if you have changed your present, then your limiting belief and the talent within needs to learn that. They have the ability to learn. And just like you've learned, so if you've made changes, if you've evolved, if you've created now safe spaces to once again embody that talent, then the shell creating center around your talents needs to learn this too. For example, I was, like I said, a dancer and an artist for many years in a lot of ways. I studied music. I used to be in theater. And there was a period in my life where the people around me were not the kind of people who would have supported had I allowed that to come out. So I hid it. I kept it really nice and safe. Today, my life is very different, and I'm able to reemerge by working with that limiting belief that said I'm not talented enough. I'm unworthy of being up on stage. I'm an imposter. I don't really do it, even though I have so many classes, so many accolades, so many different aspects of myself of when I've done theater and musicals and actually even film work. But I was around a whole grouping of people that I knew that if that part of me came out, what would happen is those people would just continuously tell me, they would either be jealous or they would make me, suffer from it or whatever. So I had to change my entire social circle in order for me to bring that back out. The more familiar you are with the legitimate fears that you have today, the more easily you can teach your seed shell what exactly should come through and what shouldn't come through, right? Because there are times when you want that seed shell to close up. So, but there are other times when you really don't. So does anybody have any, actually, I'm sorry, I hadn't been looking at the questions at all. Let me pull up these questions for a second. I get carried away. You know how I am. All right, I'm coming back. I'm coming back. All those poor limiting beliefs abandoned in the woods to fend off for themselves. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. So today, do you sometimes let yourself just be judgmental, bitchy, and negative privately, or in spaces where you find time and talents being wasted? I've had a similar experience. So, Lori, this is a really great question. The truth of the matter is that judgmentalness is a skill. It's a talent in and of itself. So I don't do anything privately. I've just learned by entering into a relationship with that talent. I have learned when that talent should come up. I've learned how to be critical without being cruel, because the cruelty was coming from my fears, where instead the judgmentalness of discernment or of criticalness is something that is an extremely useful skill set. So I don't find the need to bitch about people anymore, although, every once in a while something comes out. But what I find more is I've learned how to really use the fact that my hidden talent is I can see critical flaws. And if I let that go into excess, it becomes something like judgment. It becomes something like bitchiness. If instead I know how to moderate the use, by the way, judgment can be useful when you've got an extreme situation. So in extreme situations, I let it go. I let it out completely in that way. But more than anything, I have found kind of talents that learn how to be used. Do you find that, and then you ask me, do you find that your talents are being wasted? Like, do you find that there's a time of the talent being wasted? No, because the truth of the matter is what I have learned more than anything is, again, in that learning how to use them, I sometimes don't let them go. I have had organizations that I've been a part of that I've spent years not participating in because I was working through the fact that I was seeing all these issues and I didn't feel like I could address the issues. I thought that what was going to come was going to be coming from frustration and jealousy or fear or other kinds of things. So I stepped out and I worked on myself to understand how could I share that information in a way that was inspiring, positive. What was my talent? What did my talent need to develop in that? And so it's really a matter of not thinking of anything like, if I'm not willing to do it in public, I'm not going to do it at all. That's my attitude. If I have an undertone or some sort, I'm not going to say it. I believe in radical honesty and radical acceptance. And I also believe that everything has a function. So what I have to do is learn how to say it in a way that it's functional. That's the path that I chose, but I invite all of you to figure out what is the path for each one of your negative traits. What is the path in which they can be used in that way? Let's see. Nandini says, I often wonder if the working environment has changed in any way since women of our age left it. Are women valued and now, as opposed to being called bossy, rude, intimidating? Descriptions never applied to men. I find that they are. In talking to some of the younger generation of women, I do feel like some environments are changing. It's a process, and that's the reason why I chose to step out of some of them. There are other times, going back to Lori's question, where you choose to more boldly step into them, but you choose them not from a place of just like, I'm going to bulldozer through them. You choose them by taking conscious action and saying, I'm going to be aggressive and all these things. I know that these titles are going to be applied to me, but I'm going to prove something and I'm going to do it in that way. And even that is useful too. That's a measurement of how you use your talent. So it really is one of those other pieces to the puzzle of learning how to modulate whatever the talent is in a way. So I'm reading Gayla's. As always, one needs to consider the source of an idea or opinion as to the actual meaning. The information is always valuable because it's the point of view, even not yours, but it can help one to understand the motives that they're dealing with. Absolutely. I mean, these are important characteristics. And see, like, Lori, that's a great tool for you. And this is one of the things that we talk about. What are the right tools? So energetically for Lori, based on Ayurveda, the fear centers in the kidney. So talking directly to the kidneys allows you to work through the fear. And this is excellent. That's exactly what we want to do, right? We want to create and find the tools that work with us that allow us to better connect to these talents and to these limiting beliefs in a place that comes from friendship. And it comes from understanding rather than trying to come from bossiness and you must go type of thing. So making friends with your limits, talking to your talents, nourishing your inner soil, it all sounds good. But how? Obviously, in an hour, which we're already at the end of, I won't be able to show you everything. Hence why I created Kickstart Your Conscious Revolution. If you've never heard me talk about Kickstart, you're going to hear about it now. I'm going to take you through a few parts of Kickstart right now, because Kickstart is a 5-day boot camp that happens. That is 5 days to evolve one limiting belief or block, right? One block, just one. Just one. It's a naturally conscious framework for evolving one block. And here I want to just share with you some of the different tools that we use. This is where I use something called the Damanhur Quiziti. Quiziti means quests. And this is where these elements come in. The 8, soon to be 9, really, steps to enlightenment or mastery, according to the Damanhurian principles. You can see that they're all here, right? Take action. Keep taking action. Evaluate where you are based on the actions that you've taken. There are so many layers to the quests, to these quesiti, but for this purpose of what we're talking about right now, to not overwhelm, as I have a tendency to do, I'm only going to use the first 3, since trying to do it all right now would just be too much. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a few seconds and think of one limiting belief that is affecting you right now. Just one. Think of one that is affecting you right now. It could be one of the macro groups we talked about before: unworthiness, imposter syndrome, it's not going to work, no pain, no gain, or a derivative of one of those. Something that is really specific for you. If you feel comfortable, you don't have to, I want you can share it in the chats if you feel like you want to get it out. But if not, no worries. This is a safe space. You are free to do whatever feels good for you. Just take a second and think about it for a second and think about one limiting belief. Does everybody have one? Okay. So now I want you to close your eyes for a second. Just close your eyes. Get comfortable and take a nice deep breath. And I want you to ask the limiting belief, what would be one thing you could do in the next 5 days to become friends and show that limiting belief that the conditions have changed and that you no longer need to be protected, so that you could then focus on reconnecting with the talent or the skill within. Just ask your limiting belief that. What is one thing, just one thing you could do in the next 5 days to become friends, so that your limiting belief starts to trust you? Take a few seconds, sit with that. Just one, by the way. Don't censor your answers. Ask yourself the question and let the responses come, however that response is going to come. It could be something silly. It could be strange. We as sprouts come up with some really odd things, and that's totally okay. Just trust in the answer and write it out for yourself. If you feel comfortable, you can share it in the chat. Does everybody have one thing? Michelle has 3. For the next 5 days, I want you to do that one thing. I want you to focus your attention on the talent within and remember that you're creating the inner soil for it to begin to sprout. If you want, you can make a commitment, and for the next 5 days, by posting in the Naturally Conscious community with the hashtag BYLB, my action. If you want, you don't have to. It's just the start of a whole new relationship with your limiting beliefs. I really do have so much more to say on this. Well, the plants actually have so much more. So much more. So I want you to imagine taking 5 days to really kickstart the process of evolving one limiting belief and liberating the talent within. So cracking open that shell, taking 5 days to really focus on that. You want to help the limiting belief understand that the conditions are now different, so that you no longer need to be protected from that thing. And once it feels safe, the talent can begin to grow. I want you to think about doing this together as a group. That's what Kickstart Your Conscious Revolution is really all about. In Kickstart Your Conscious Revolution, you have this fast-paced program where you choose one, I tell you all, one block or limiting belief that is most important for you in this moment. You discover its original purpose. Where did it get formed? What was the positive function it was trying to carry out for yourself? You discover then what are the talents that are inside that need to feel safe, and consciously choose what direction you want to take with that talent so you can start to learn how to use it, when to use it, and the most important of them all, how much of that talent to use, that moderation we were talking about before. And then you want to consciously replant your limiting belief seed in this new environment. Help your limiting belief seed move from the past into the present so that the talents can actually sprout with support from your passions. The passions that you feel, all that list of things you should be doing, all of that, all those feelings inside of you are all real. They're all you. And what I want you to do is be able to fully access all of them. In Kickstart Your Conscious Revolution, you have a private group inside of the Naturally Conscious community, inside of Blooming Sprouts, and you have full access to me and the materials. Every day, you get a daily prep to get you ready for the day's evolutions. You have an activity to move you through that energy, and a master class where we walk through the step in a conversational, collaborative way. This is about me sharing with you a series of talents, wrong word, a series of information, a series of parts of the process and the framework, but really the way we get there, where we get to that full evolution, is by doing it together. Each one of us mirrors one on the other. That's why the participation of the group is so important. Evolution happens fastest when done together. Mutualisms, species that are in mutualisms are the ones that evolve the fastest, the most resilient, the ability to really understand their environment and thrive in that environment. And all of the teachings we're going to be using are guided by Himalayan Cedar. Together anymore, but I go visit often. I'll be there tomorrow to spend time with Himalayan Cedar, because it was with Himalayan Cedar that I actually created this entire program. Himalayan Cedar and the help of Pan, the god of the earth and of, all of what is the physical environment, were really the ones that guided me to understand how to put together the different elements of this boot camp. And I call it a boot camp because it's 5 days. It's quick paced. It's so fun. And then I pull in from the Kabbalah and the Daman Herkwiziti and different aspects of it that we're going to touch. Basically, what we're going to cover in the master classes is not going to be your traditional mindset stuff. Those who know me know I don't go into that directly. I don't believe in trying to tackle that from a write the same line 700 times on a piece of paper and one day it's going to change you. I don't say that doesn't work. I think that's just one tool. And so we do talk about that in day 4 when we talk about the tools. But we're going to talk about the grail. We're going to talk about the massive energy centers of our planet that are going to help us move this. We're going to talk about the origins of your soul, the mission, and also your life purpose, and the personalities that support you in that life purpose. We're going to talk about why the plants are creating the conditions for you to evolve, so that they're actually pushing this planetary evolution, and you as part of this planetary evolution. They're pushing you right now to step up and work through all of these different limiting beliefs so that you can evolve into the person that you were meant to be. And so you could actually have an impact, the impact deep inside of yourself you want to make. And more importantly, we're going to talk about the tools and who you become at the end of this journey. When those limiting beliefs no longer define you, who is it that you are? And how do we reinforce you continuing to be that person? Remember, this is 5 days. This is a boot camp. This is about kickstarting the process. This is not about walking at the end of those 5 days and being like, everything is hunky-dory. No, this is about planting the seed so that the seed may grow. So Kickstart Your Conscious Revolution really is about walking you through a natural process, a completely natural process for making your limiting beliefs feel safe, and so that they no longer feel the need to hold you back, so that your talents can finally take action. The next boot camp starts on the 5th of February. It's 5 days. And if you're in Flourishing Sprouts and in Blooming Sprouts, you're in already. If you're not, here's the thing. If you sign up for it now, the whole boot camp is free, because Blooming Sprouts is free for the first month. And after that, if you love everything else that's in there, reconnect with the plant kingdom, our book club, our writing group, our master classes that happen every single month, it's just $12 a month. I couldn't have made it any freaking cheaper, because my goal in all of this is I am tired of seeing us being held back by these limiting beliefs, only because they keep thinking that the environment is the same as the past. I want every one of us to live the moment, to be here in the present tense. And I am willing to do whatever I can in order to make that happen. So if you're ready to really take that step, to start to understand a different way of connecting into your limiting beliefs, then it's free, honestly. It's just free to try. You get 1 whole month to try it. And if you're already in Blooming Sprouts, if you're already in Flourishing Sprouts, then it's already yours. And all you got to do is show up and be willing to do the work for the next 5 days, from the 5th to the 9th of February. Pretty, come on. I kind of make it easy for you, don't I? I should make it harder. I should make it harder. Does anybody have any questions? Anyone? Go ahead, Nandini.
I was wondering if you could just show us that slide again with the quests.
Oh. Where is it? There, this one. This one?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. No problem. I'm reading through what you all wrote in the chat. Thank you. Limited belief, not imaginative. Yeah, no, not true. No one wants to hear what I have to say. That's such an important one. So do I understand that one. It won't work attracting clients to my healing practice. I love this. Oh, did you just say my mic got lower? Sorry, I just saw that. I don't know why. There's no reason for it. Nothing has changed. Oh, all right, everyone. How was that? Interesting? Informative? You like it? Excited? Yay! Very eye-opening. Thank you, Megan. That's it. That's what I'm here to do. I am just, well, I'm grateful. That's what I am. I am grateful for the time that you've given. I am always willing to answer any questions. You can send me a message in NCC, or you can post in NCC. We're all here, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Like I said, Kickstart starts on the 5th of February, and it's 5 days. It's pretty intense, but the total time every day is the masterclass, which is an hour. Plus, I'd say anywhere between an hour, it's an hour and 15 minutes if you want to have extra questions. And then it's probably about two hours a day, but all of the recordings are there. All of the materials are there. And after the class is over, after the 5 days, the materials stay up for another 2 weeks. So you have 2 full weeks to be able to work through all of the materials and take care of things and do that. So you're totally welcome to take your time. Some people find that they really enjoy the bootcamp pace, the idea that you're being pushed every day to kind of like move things along, to just really create that energy. And other people instead prefer to take longer approach. Whatever works for you, there's no problem in there. Plus, like I said, you're inside of Blooming Sprouts at that point, and you have access to an entire calendar of events and of beautiful people in which to talk about it, including my signature course, Reconnect with the Plant Kingdom. That's it for me, everyone. I have spoken everything that I needed to speak. Any last questions before I go? Wow, I was that good. I love it when I'm that good. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, thank you. All right. Tanya, why can't you join? Aw. Now I'm gonna be sad. If you want to talk about it, you feel free to contact me, okay? Not a problem. All right, everyone. If that's it, if there's no other questions, look, I made it at only 17. Well, I don't actually know. Did I schedule this for an hour and a half? I even forget. It tells. I want to thank Veronica for these beautiful slides that she helped me create. I'm not usually very good with that kind of stuff. That was a limiting belief I had, and I had to work through it. So I was very excited. But thank you all for your participation. If you have any questions at all, I'm going to be sending you some information via email. Those of you that, again, are already in Flourishing and in Blooming Sprouts, you will see that the Kickstart group is now active. It's open. And the first piece of information with your homework, because there is homework to prepare, it's pre-work, it's pre-homework, is all ready and there for you. And if everything, I will see you hopefully on the 5th of February. Bye, everyone.